and then called her, and we didn't stop talking for well over an hour about all of the complexity of it and the depth of it and this but I found it so entertaining and sexy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special ScreenCraft conversation. I'm Janelle Riley from Variety, and I am so excited to be joined today by two of the artists behind the fantastic film Babygirl. With educational resources, industry insights, and direct connections to agents, managers, and producers, ScreenCraft serves as a bridge between emerging talent and the film and television industry, offering screenwriters the tools they need to succeed. I'm so excited to get into today's discussion. Please join me in welcoming today's guest. We have an actor and filmmaker. She previously directed Bodies, 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 and she's the writer, director, producer of Babygirl. Please welcome Halina Reijn. And the film star, of course, Emmy and Academy Award winner, is simply one of our best actors working today. Please welcome Nicole Kidman. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, congratulations on a fantastic movie, but I love to go back to the beginning actually and ask everyone sort of, how they got into this business. What was their first job, the first time you felt you could call yourself an actor? Or Helene, I think you began as an actor too, or actually maybe you started at the same time as a filmmaker.
No, I really started as an actor, really purely acting. For me, it was my first job was I was in the first year of my theater school and they had auditions for Ophelia in Hamlet. And that was my first that I consider professional job. And then but before that, I did TV since I was 15.
Did you get the role?
Yes, I got the role and a contract. And then I left school and I immediately started working. So I only did theater school for 1 year. That's
So
why I'm
wait,
a good actress now, no. But
you had been on TV, but you consider theater your first like real acting job?
it's a little different in Europe, I think, because of the schools are so classical and you have to audition for them for a very long time. So then you considered going pro. But since I didn't really finish my school, I didn't really, became a professional in that sense. So, but I consider Ophelia my real serious first acting job that I really could show my skills, I think. Before that was more discovering and exploring and not like Nicole, who really started, as a young girl.
Nicole, what was your first professional job?
I had a role in a film called Bush Christmas. And I was 14. And I got to ride horses, and it took 6 weeks to film it, so I didn't have to go to school for 6 weeks. And yeah, and I had little freckles all over my face and wild curly hair, and then I did BMX Bandits.
The theme I'm
I auditioned for Ophelia and didn't get it when I came to
really?
America. Yeah, I auditioned to Kevin Kline's Hamlet. Yeah,
Really?
first came, yeah. But they were so nice to me. I couldn't have worked in the Joe Paps Theatre at that time, the public. I think because I didn't, even though I'm an American citizen, I don't think they knew that and everything, but I didn't get the job anyway. But I auditioned and they were really nice to me and they encouraged me.
So
Well,
sweet. So sweet.
I
again,
almost got it.
congratulations.
Almost got it. I think I came down to
Almost.
the last
Yeah.
3 or 4 or something, but
Yeah.
then they were like, well, but you're not even American, so you can't work at the public.
Right, right.
They didn't know I had
Right.
American citizenship because I was born in America.
That's right.
Yes.
Um, well, again, Babygirl is such a sharp and daring and fascinating journey. I would just love to start at the beginning and sort of ask, what was the initial spark or idea that led to the script?
Well, I think all the roles that I played in the theater really, because a lot of them are women looking for freedom, but they never really get it. They all weirdly kill themselves. I did a lot of classical theater. So Ophelia, for instance, goes from virgin to drowning herself in 5 scenes. But most of them do that. Hedda Gabler does that. The human voice jumps out of the window. So there's a lot of that. And I always wanted to create my own stories about women looking for freedom, but then maybe also finding it and staying alive. So I think that is kind of the very first seed of it. And later it was this question that I really struggled with as a woman. Is it even possible to love all these different layers of our identity and not just the ones that we, feel comfortable with to present to the outside world, but also the layers of myself that I'm more ashamed of? And that kind of like was this question I had, and that's how I started writing.
Is there, when you write, is there like a research period of sorts, or do you just sit down and start, freehand writing ideas right away?
First, I start freehand writing ideas right away. And then I do a one pager and I go into treatment. And then whilst I go into treatment, I did a lot of research because when I had the idea that she should run a robotics company, I really had to do so much
Oh,
research.
that's right. I remember that. You going, yeah.
I, that kind of thing, and also BDSM, that kind of world, it's not necessarily something I know that much about. So I just really wanted to be sure that I knew what I was talking about. You can kind of have feelings about things and have a lot of intuition about things, but when you're writing, of course, as the three of us know, you want to be very, knowledgeable before you start. So
Mm,
yes, I did a lot
mm.
of research in the process, but first I think it's super important to just stay with your intuition and your intention.
I think that's so fascinating that the robotics aspect of it is what required so much research. It didn't even occur to me, but of course you have to learn that world.
Yeah, learn the world and also what is it to be a female CEO, because we really wanted to also make sort of a comedy of manners about two generations. And there's now so much to do about leadership and how to lead and horizontal leadership or vertical leadership. And we really wanted to, we also thought that would be funny to take some of that corporate world and really, thread it through the story. So I had to do a lot of research for that. I talked to a lot of people for that.
And Nicole, at what point did the script or the project come to you? I don't know if it was, the script you ended up with, or you were sort of talking to directors. You've always been like so great about reaching out to directors, especially female directors, and building these relationships. I'm sort of curious where it all began.
Because I saw Instinct and I really loved it. And then Helena and I were sort of texting and talking a bit, and we were working. She was rewriting something for us and was possibly going to direct it. And then she was working on Babygirl. And I heard she had this script called Babygirl. And I was like, are you interested in me for Babygirl? And then she sent me the script, and I was like, oh my God. And I read it all in one sitting and just went, devoured it, absorbed it, and then called her. And we didn't stop talking for well over an hour about all of the complexity of it and the depth of it and this. But I found it so entertaining and sexy, and it kind of it runs the gamut of emotions, and it was just so also so new. There was something that was so vibrant and new about it, which I loved, because Helena's brilliant at what dealing with what is happening right now.
Yeah.
So block your ears, Helena, because but she's so, I think because she done bodies, she's very aware of her own sexuality and the things she's exploring and as a woman, and but then she's also very in touch with what is happening now in the world. And that's why when she talks about the generations colliding and teaching each other. And so there was just something incredibly relevant to now about the film. And even her choice of music, which wasn't written into the script, but she would play music on the set, or she would send ideas for music. She just, and the way she even dances, or she's just, Helena's very free. And
Mhm.
so I think the film has a freeness to it, even though it's structured and funny and all, and it was beautifully written, and there was a rhythm to a lot of the dialogue because she does come from the theater. There's also this kind of abandonment to other scenes that she allows to just be. So that's what I found really unique about it.
It's such a tricky tone to get right because I think we've all seen the bad version of this, you know what I mean? Or the bad
Yeah.
attempt. And it's so specific and it walks such a fine line. And it is also very funny in the way that life is funny. Was that sort of a balancing act, just finding that in the script, or did you find you had to get on sets and kind of, work with the actors to sort of achieve that tone?
I think working with someone so brilliant as Nicole is, and then Harris, who's of course much younger, but has definitely an insane amount of talent, you can really explain the tone, and Nicole can do anything you ask her. That's of course the first day you encounter that is insane. It's magical. It's like I have somebody here in front of me that I can ask any detail, any emotion, and she even a gesture that I do, or I look into her eyes and she already gets it. So of course we had to look for that tone, but it was very clear that we wanted to play with cliches and these archetypes of the sexual thrillers of the 90s, but even also of all those classical female roles. And then we wanted to transform it into this female driven story with its own specific tone that to me was driven by the element of performance. Because I feel as a woman that I have to perform all day long, like I want to be the perfect leader, I want to be the perfect daughter, I want to be the perfect friend. And I think Romy really suffers from that. She really wants to be perfect and she's performing all day long and she's not able in the beginning of the movie to really fully be herself. And what even is that herself? And so for us, the tone had to do with performance and showing almost that we are actors and showing the mechanism of going in and out of it. And they both were brilliant, brilliant. And that is also really funny in my eyes because you show the humanity and the vulnerability of being human.
And
I
there
also,
was a wildness to the scenes, like at times. So, the blocking was there, but then we didn't have to stick to the blocking, which is kind of fantastic as an actor because it's very, very fluid then, and that's when there's a little bit of danger and it's wild at times. And that's to do with the cinematographer as well, being able to capture that. It's to do with Helena um, not going, okay, well, hit this mark and stand there and here's the light. And none of that came into it. It was always very, very free on the set. And that's was exciting.
you've played so many different roles in so many different genres. I'm curious, was there any special preparation you did for the role of Romy? In every character.
I came into Helena. I mean, I know this sounds weird, but the two of us just spent so much time and talked and slowly came together. And we would do the scenes together, and she would play the other characters, and then I could. So she can play any role, and she did it. She played me with Harris at times when they were rehearsing because she wanted to separate us at times to rehearse. But but the rehearsal was becoming incredibly close to her because then the two of us together would make the performance because she's written it, she's directing it, and I'm doing it. So it requires this kind of melding of spirits in a weird way. It was weird,
So
right?
it was weird. It was a little
Yeah.
magical. It was just
Yeah.
merging of
Yeah.
two people. And I think for both of us, I feel in a way, the movie is in conversation with earlier work in the sense that
Mm.
the movie is in conversation with all these archetypical icons that women have played all over the history. And so I think that is why we really found each other also in that, even though she has never seen me act. But I think those characters almost are with us and in our DNA. And we kind of
Mm.
like could like evolve from that. And I feel that was kind of like an onset thing between us and an intimacy and just two talents meeting in a she's so open. I'm talking about you in the third person. You are so open and you are so able to become I think great actors are able to they use their technique, they use all their experience, but in the moment they almost go to a point of zero, of nothing. And within that you can be totally open and in the moment, and then that electricity that Nicole's talking about can exist. And we had our DP, Jasper Wolf, who's this Dutch man that I always work with. He also knows that everything for me is about the acting and from the actors. And everything on set is about that and not about the technique or the light that we have to get or of course, we want to have beautiful lighting, but it's more important how can the actors move and do they have freedom?
Your actors are so fantastic. I think Antonio Banderas is so
Oh,
amazing as the husband. I was actually trying to think. I didn't know if you had worked together before because you really feel this lived-in relationship.
yeah. The minute I met Antonio, I felt like I I'm married to him. Like it was so weird because I could share anything. He would talk. He's been through an enormous amount in his life, which he shared when he was talking about the Almodovar movie that he made. So I'm not speaking out of turn here, but he had near-death experience, and I think anyone that's had that is so raw. And if they've come through it and they're open and going, life is so he's so available as a person. And I just was able to be with him, trust him, and it felt like there was an enormous amount of history. We'd met many times in the past, not many, but a few. And yeah, it was actually kind of strange. The first time I met him, we sat and we talked for about 3.5 hours to the point where Helena's like, okay, you guys, you have to stop now. Um, yeah, and we cried together, and that was so much of our rehearsal was like you run the gamut of a relationship in 3.5 hours because you're sharing everything about your life immediately. That's quite rare. And then Harris, we had less time together purposely, but it was very, Helena would put us in just a very sparse room. There was a desk and we sat and we would sort of read through the scenes and then play it out. But then we'd be like, no, we're not going to, she'd give ideas about what she was going to do on the day, but we didn't really rehearse things.
No.
It's
We
such
waited. So,
it's such
yeah,
casting because I feel like, 20 years ago, Antonia was getting cast a lot as like sort of the Samuel character. So
right.
I love that full circle moment. So much does depend.
So divine. Like the idea of that's what Helena was like. I don't want a man that you're going, oh my God, leave him now, quick. He's a horror, run for the door. You wanted someone that you go, why? You've got everything. What are you doing? Because I think it's very, very real,
Mhm.
and the way in which it's Romy's journey, it's Romy's crisis. It's not personal. And that is so much our journey as humans, a lot of times, is that what's going on inside us and what we're desiring and what we're struggling with and our conflicts and everything, it's about our own journey. So whoever we're with, it's not about them, ultimately. And that's what I think is so beautiful because both these men are there on the sidelines, but Romy's discovering who she is instead of having to perform or be something that she thinks she has to be for everybody else. And that's why I love the confession scene because it's like, I've tried to be what you want me to be.
Yeah.
And it would have been so much easier to be able to be that. Trust me. I wish I could be the woman that you want, but this is actually the woman that I am. And can you still love me?
So much has been made, rightfully so, of the chemistry between Romy and Samuel. And I'm curious, Helena, was there sort of any kind of a chemistry read when you cast them? Because, it really does hit really, you just knew it would work.
Because so Nicole and I, of course, we were already like merging at that point, and we were very close. And we were super close, and of course we were talking like, oh my God, how are we going to find this young man, because who's able to hold his ground, but also not only that, but then also dominate her in a way, and who's going to be that. And then I saw Triangle of Sadness, and I immediately was very intrigued. And then when I watched Beach Rats, a movie that if you haven't seen it, I would recommend everybody to watch, and he's incredible, really, really, really incredible, and he shows his full range. And then we both were very excited. And then I had a first conversation with him, and he was kind of interested, but very British about it. And he was like, "Yeah, well." And then, but I was immediately totally. I was sure. I was sure when I talked to him, I knew it. And then he wanted one more conversation. He had a couple of questions that were very smart, also. And yeah, and then I just knew. And then you two met at some kind of event. You saw each other for the first time.
Yes.
And you talked.
No, we met at the Met Gala.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but I left it to you. Yes.
Is that not it crazy? So
Really.
we met all dressed up in gowns and sort of went, okay, hi, how are you? And then we were ripped apart, like, crazy. And then that was that.
Yeah. And then we
Yeah.
had a Zoom, of course, because he lives in the UK. So they met at the Met Gala. They had a very lovely conversation. They both texted me after that, and I was so relieved that they met, and I was excited. But I was also a little bit like a mother who was like, "Why wasn't I there? Why wasn't I witnessing this first meeting?" And then the Zoom, I remember so well. We had that little Zoom. It was short. It wasn't even that whatever, but I could immediately feel when they were talking to each other. I just sat back and I was like, okay, this is going to be perfect, because immediately they had kind of a humor together, and And then we all three of us felt we shouldn't rehearse it a lot. I don't, as an actress, I don't necessarily love to rehearse movies. I think it can be, I think if you're good, you just save it for the moment. You learn your lines very, very well, and then and you talk to all the actors as a director a lot, but separate from each other. And then it was just, yeah, the chemistry between them, in my eyes, is what's making the movie. And
But it
of
was
course,
so funny,
maybe
like on the Zoom, I had a book sitting up on my bookshelf called Can I Ask You a Personal Question? And I looked up and I thought, okay, I'm going to get this down. And I pulled it down. And I think I started like asking the questions. And that was our chemistry read.
That's cool. It sounds
He
like
answered them too.
we did.
Like, they were really, yeah, I can't say what the questions were because they were too like
or
full on, right? One of them was like, it was really,
pretty
and we
heavy.
answered them really quickly. And it's an amazing rehearsal process actually to do that.
Is that
Because
sort
you
of unusual?
immediately go to intimacy when you go, can I, and you read out the question. The questions are deep and difficult. And you have to answer them.
Is that normal to have that sort of a rehearsal period of time? It doesn't, I
That
don't
was
think.
a Zoom. That was an impromptu, random, me being silly, but it actually worked
It
to,
really worked to break the
yeah.
ice. You kind of feel, and yeah, and also the whole thing I think was very smart of both of them, but the approach of not getting to know each other too well. I think that it just is for two characters like this is just better, especially again if you have great actors, you can really lean on that, and you don't have to be scared as a director, like, oh my God, I have to rehearse because I have to see if my scene works. You just really have to let that go, and you have your own nightmares, of course, always about your own work, right? But you have to trust. And in this case, I mean, I couldn't even believe sometimes when we did scenes how the scenes that Nicole is talking about in the sort of in the basement office room where they meet for the first time and they have just two chairs, a table. I love that kind of setup where it's only about the actors, just like a chess game between two giants for me. And that's, yeah, then I can only like sit behind the monitor and just go, oh my God. And then the scene in the cheap hotel room, we shot that on the last day. That was a studio build, and they were alone in that room with Jasper, our DP, and it was absolute. I knew at that moment that when I was watching the monitor, this is something unique, and this is for me the core of the movie. This everything in that red room is for me is the movie. I thought we can just do this as a little short movie. Like I was completely blown away by how they performed that scene.
Did you purposely save it for the last day or was it just turned out that way?
Turned out that way. We didn't, but it turned out to be good because they were so far in knowing each other, and then at that point it was good to really, because that scene goes is really a whole marriage kind of. They go through all the steps. They have fun with each other, they fight each other, they explore sexuality together, they kind of are bored, they don't know what to do with each other, and they walk out, and so it really helps, even though we didn't set it up in that way, that they knew each other at that point, and that gave all the different layers and enabled them to play and make these really quick shifts in emotions. And yeah, I love it. I mean, every time I see it, I'm still just in awe of them.
Total side note, but just something I think is brilliant. I don't know if you've seen the Babygirl milk jar and cookies that they have as swag.
Well, what is that?
It's just some cookies that they give out, and then they have like a little jar for milk that says Babygirl on it. I just think it's brilliant marketing.
That's
It is, right? Yeah.
A24 doing
You
that.
want a cookie?
Yeah,
Or
and they're really good cookies
I
too.
heard that one of the people that I did an interview with said that his friend was doing a party called Baby Girl Christmas Party, where they were going to drink milk and say good girl to each other.
I love it. I want to go to that party personally.
Yeah, exactly. Is this party open to everyone or is it for two people maybe? I
Sure.
don't
You could have your own.
know. I am curious because there's a lot of the movie that is fun, but you're also being asked to grapple with these big issues, and she's going through a lot. Is that ever hard on you as an actor? Do you take your work home with you at all, or do you leave it at the stage?
No, no, this sort of circled around. I mean, I think, well, it was like a storm at times, like it was tempestuous inside me, and it was like penetrating my dreamscape, and it was just like everything that was I think it's a really intense role. There's a lot of things also we shot that only snippets of it are in the film. So there's a depth to the scenes that's there, even if they're in a montage sequence. I always say we shot the whole scene. It may be just a snippet. You may just see a couple of frames in the actual film, but we did so much. And so everything has a beginning, middle, and end to it. Like all of those moments that are captured are all full scenes. Even the EMDR, we shot half a day of me doing that. And then there's therapy scenes, there's all sorts of things that didn't end up, but they were the rehearsal. So all of those little textures, they vibrate under the surface of the film, but I had to perform, I had to be in them, and it was pretty amazing actually, because it was so deep. It was so deep within me. It was really a growth for me and emotional. Like I expanded as a person, I think, by playing the role. But it was, painful at times.
Sure.
And
Well,
and raw and really vulnerable and then frightening and then exciting and stimulating and all. So it was an enormous amount of emotion, and I'm in pretty much every frame of the film. So there's that stamina, that's emotional stamina and physical stamina that's required. And I just loved it so much that I didn't want to not fully realize it.
was
Yeah,
there
yeah, and what I also sorry, but what I also really think in how you act, you are so full on in every scene, and which I love and totally relate to. I never want to
Mm.
compare myself with you ever, but that kind of she goes into it really, and there's no. Of course, she has an insane amount of technique, but she never holds back. She's never like, oh, I'll do it a little. We'll get away. I'm tired. Let's do the. No, no, it's always full on, and of course, as a filmmaker, that is just the best experience of my life. I've never, and it moved me deeply. I was often incredibly moved by little scenes even. It was so personal, and also it was very physical. It was incredibly physical, the work that we were doing, and we didn't have 80 shooting days. We had a very limited amount of time, and we were all over New York, so we had to big move. So that meant that whilst we were doing the scene, we didn't have that much time, so we really had to push, 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 and then being in every shot. I mean, sometimes I felt very guilty, for what we had to push Nicole through, but she just kept being so courageous and so strong and so vulnerable and funny, because I find the character also incredibly moving and funny, But so I think all these different layers, and we also talk a lot, Nicole and I, about of course, people always say to her, she's so courageous. And I think she is insanely courageous. But it's also this kind of material for women, of our age. It is not so common. It should be way more common. These kind of roles where you can show your full range. We need to have way more of those. More women need to stand up, and that's why Nicole is so important for all of us women, that she actually does what she says, which is find me in the corner of the world, and find my little movie that didn't even come out in America, this little Dutch movie made with government money, and with my best friends, and she finds it, and she actually attaches herself to my film, so that this film is now like spreading its light, and that is really because of her and what she did in the film, and that is just the biggest present of my life that ever anyone gave me.
To that end, we always like to sort of close out with an advice question, and this one kind of applies to that perfectly. It's, what advice would you give to aspiring actors and filmmakers who want to explore bold, vulnerable, and unconventional storytelling?
Go for it.
Well, I think I really want to lead with this advice that I keep repeating it, but I really love it. And that's what Paul Verhoeven said to me, that what really helps is so what is a question you have, a very specific question you have that you do not know the answer to. And this is the question that scares you, that makes you nervous, but you're really curious to know. And if you write that on a piece of paper, that will be your intention. And every time you're distracted by, oh, it's never going to work, or nobody wants me, or people are, I don't know, mean to you, you can always go back to your intention. Or when you become too much ego, you become maybe a little arrogant, you always go back to your intention. And I think that's something that me and Nicole also share. It's all about our spiritual intention. No matter what other people will think of our movie, how many people will buy a ticket, we hope, of course, for the best. But in the end, all we can do is have a pure intention that aligns with your soul.
Absolutely. And the word, like, stay curious, stay open, and be a seeker, because you seek things out, um and yeah, that's when people talk about bravery. It's not bravery, it's just curiosity and staying completely open. I always say I make teenage choices because I don't think of the consequences.
Well, it's such a great film. I'm so excited. I'm so excited by how much everybody loves it. And I want to remind everyone, thank you for joining us for the ScreenCraft conversation. Also, this movie is in theaters on Christmas Day. What a lovely present. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. This was so much
Thank
fun.
you.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Happy holidays,
Happy
everyone.
holidays.